Hello, how are you? How's everyone doing? Welcome to the Intuitive Frameworks. And today it's a very interesting story that I want to share with everyone because this is an idea that I suddenly got to my head in the middle of meditation. And I thought this is a story that I think is just a tale of caution, just to be aware of things happening around you, especially if you don't feel like you could trust yourself, but sometimes in the moments you don't feel you trust yourself that much, you realize that it has that sense of like regret of, oh, I should have trusted myself in that moment of time. And this is one of those stories I want to share with you guys. And this is a story that happened just over 10 years ago when I was studying in New York for my graphic design degree. And this was when I just started, and just not even a year in, it was actually 4 months in. And this is when I was just fresh out of high school and I just turned 19. So, what I want to share is this is a little hairstylist horror story that I want to share. This is a bit difficult for me to share because it was such like a core memory of mine at the time. But I think this is like a very important story to share. So grab a snack, have a drink, and I'm going to tell you the story. So, just for context, I've always been a very timid person and I lived a fairly comfortable life with my parents always support me, allowing me to do what I do. And I have at least like the resources around me when I needed them. But I had to work hard to get to where I am. Especially, it's like no matter how much money you have in the world, but you as the child have to take the final exam. I worked really hard to get into college at that time. And it was my first time solo living in another country. And just to clarify, I am not American, even though I may have slight accent of it because been influenced by it. I'm South African and Taiwanese, dual nationality, and I grew up in South Africa my whole life. And yeah, so went straight to America at 19, solo. And at least my parents have some friends in California, but at that time I was living in New York. That's like a bit of a distance. So at the time I was living in like the college dormitory, made friends with people in my cohorts and also with people in the same major and stuff. And then follow up, I was such a people pleaser that is willing to do anything and everything to make the other person feel supported, even if it means putting my needs last, absolute last, because I want to support others as how I hope others will support me. So it's almost like I always give 100% in everything, but I've always received the 50% in the end. So at the time, I made a friend. Crystal and I, we were like became immediate friends because she's like a Chinese American. She's ethnically Chinese, but she primarily grew up in New York, lived her whole life there. And myself and her, I felt we relate to each other, and she was like very friendly, very sociable, willing to like make friends with everyone, and we just like, end up becoming like very close because she was keen about my background being South African and also Taiwanese, because you don't usually hear that a lot. So we end up being friends and became like really close in such a short period of time. And at that time, I had long hair, really long hair, and I decided to cut my hair short, like really short, like a short bob, because I thought it was like all cool, trendy, and everything at the time. I thought this is like my first sign of freedom, just like cutting my hair. My personal history with haircuts is that I always go back to Taiwan, and usually it's my mom who would talk to the hairstylist, telling them how to do my hair, like what's the style that we're looking for. And I do not have the same knowledge about beauty style, shape as I have now, as a much more mature adult now. And yeah, I was very unfamiliar with it. So even just try to tell the hairstylist like what to do, it's foreign to me also. My appearance is very different to how I am now. I would be, it's not so dramatically different, but my self-esteem was extremely low, especially how I looked. Like I was extremely overweight. I had very bad acne. I just did not have good habits of eating. I'd have no like exercise habits, anything of that nature. Pretty much the opposite of where I am right now in my life. I was basically a loser, my definition of being a loser. And it wasn't a good period in my life, meaning like how I feel about myself physically. So I think that's why I was like very keen if people were willing to speak with me, because I always put myself down regarding like how like people would automatically judge me on how I look. So initially I went to the Japanese hair salon that was right opposite of my college, and it was like a small hair studio. And because it was located in Manhattan, the fee just for the hair cutting was, I remember, was $500. And yeah, it was like pretty expensive. And when I told my friend about the haircut and how much it cost, she was, oh my gosh, like, why would you spend so much money on it? Because at that time, like, I didn't really realize, like, what's the norm in terms of hair cost and such. And she herself, she's from Queens. So she told me, why don't you go to this hair salon that, who is my dad's friend's place? And it was located in Flushing. Flushing is like a part of Queens for those who are not familiar with New York. And it's like an hour subway ride from Manhattan to Flushing. So I went to Flushing, get a haircut, and this was in December, middle of winter. I believe it was like 5 degrees or just somewhere around the single digits, and it was like freezing. I went to get my haircut, and also my mom told me that you should get like a perm that curves the ends inward, because like at least for my hair texture, if you don't blow dry properly, it will just go like outwards, which looks like you have bad hair. And I was like, okay, I'll keep this in mind. I went to the hair salon, and this was like close to the Flushing station, and it was a block away, and it was located upstairs. When you enter into this hair salon, it was so packed and busy and very messy, very busy, very flamboyant, like very typical Chinese, like chaos. By chaos, this means try to get people in and out, get as many customers, try to make efficiency out of everything. And the thing regarding Chinese culture that a lot of people may find it very difficult to comprehend is that people, especially grew up primarily in Chinese culture, even within Queens or in a Chinese household, people tend to be very brash and very critical. So it's, if you don't move along things very quickly, it's like you're wasting their time. And this is like very common, no matter like what part of Asia you're from. But this is very prominent in Chinese culture. So I was very timid. I'm not someone who's very brash, especially with people I'm not familiar with, because I just was scared that I was going to offend people or bother people's time. So I met up with my friend. She took me to the hair salon. She told the owner who has done her hair and told them like what I want. And they spoke Cantonese, but I'm not familiar with Cantonese. And she just basically told them what I wanted. And I was like, okay, let's get going. And the moment we started, it felt like something just doesn't feel right. It was a very subtle feeling. Something's just not certain. And as like they're like handling, I think at least like 10 people, including myself, I felt I was like very neglected and felt very lost in between. And it was like the owner and his wife like managing. I don't remember if they have other like hairstylists, but it was mainly like the owner and his wife. And they got started and doing the perm and stuff like that. Looking back on it, the biggest red flag was they weren't very transparent regarding their service pricing. So my friend literally did not tell me anything regarding the pricing they would give me, except for the cutting she got for herself, which was basically a trim on her very long hair. That was a big, big, big red flag, is not knowing like how much the cost of the service before entering in. And because of that, they were able to try to manipulate prices without my knowledge. But the way they did the styling was very, very odd to me, and it took a really long time, and cutting and so forth. The cutting wasn't an issue, but it was like the perming and also being bullied. The wife bullied me to do things that I just didn't feel comfortable to do, pressuring me. I think it was a pressure that made me feel extremely uncomfortable, as if my space was invaded. And they were doing my hair. And normally, like when you get like a perm and stuff like that, you have to go through a long process, get like the chemicals to stay in, wash it out, blow dry it, and so forth. But the weird part was that I want the curls to go inward, not like curls straight down, like from root to the end, just the ends of the bob. And I just didn't feel comfortable whatsoever. And in my mind, I was like, this doesn't seem right in terms of a hair technique, even though I wasn't a hair specialist. And continued to ignore me. I felt I couldn't speak up for myself because I thought they're the experts. In my logical mind, they should know what they're doing. But in my inner intuition, I was like, this feels completely wrong. And then follow up, the biggest shock of it all was that at the end of doing my hair, just like you're supposed to blow dry it, they didn't even blow dry my hair. My hair was wet hair. If you remember the Kim Kardashian wet hair look, that she wore that very tiny corset at the Met Gala, my hair was exactly like hers, except hers is at least stylized. Mine was just wet hair. Wet hair in the middle of December New York winter. Keep in mind, in Chinese medicine, it is like extreme taboo to have your hair wet in any cold weather. If your hair is wet and cold wind blows, you are guaranteed to get sick with a cold or a flu. This was no joke. And these Chinese hairstylists, I believe they are Cantonese, Chinese hairstylists, cold, wet hair, and my hair is just like a total mess. Total mess. And like I was like shell shocked. Like I got extreme PTSD from it because I was alone against these hairstylists, these owners that basically bullied me into getting my hair done. And the worst part of it all was during the process when they were doing my hair, the wife even asked me like, you should get your hair dyed as well. To me, that was a code for, we could make more money out of you if you add this hair dye job into the mix. At least at that time, I was like, there's no way I am getting a hair dye because my hair color was this hair color being black. I don't need any crazy hair color that was trending at the time in the 2010s. I don't need any crazy hair color. And I was just like, why would you tell someone to get their hair dyed if that's not what they want in the first place? And then, like, after my hair was quote unquote done, I was like, I just want to get the hell out of that salon. I absolutely hated that salon experience and that salon in general. It just felt like a very uneasy environment. And then after I get my hair done, my very wet hair, and met up with my friend Crystal, she basically was like, "Oh, how was the hair salon experience?" And I was like, honestly, like I was like so traumatized from it, I couldn't even speak to her. And this is should have been my biggest red flag with her at the time, but my people pleasing was kicking in very strongly. That I was willing to put up the blame for myself, not to blame her for introducing me to this place. And at that time, I think I remember I even told my mom, like, why would your friend introduce you to a salon that basically make your friend's hair look bad? Would you introduce like your boss to a hair salon that turns their hair bad? And when I explained to her, like, why is my hair wet? My hair looks terrible. This is not what I was looking for. Her response back was basically quiet. In other words, this shouldn't be a big issue for you. And to me, like looking back on it now, she never really cared for me in the first place. She only cared that at least I'm there to entertain her. And it almost sounds like one of those like sabotage movies of like friends trying to sabotage one another just to outshine the other. And that's what it felt like at that time. At least like when our friendship like progressed more and more. Yeah, and to me that was like a biggest red flag was that I was willing to not blame her and put my needs down to keep this friendship. And the hairstylist was her dad's friend. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention the worst part. The original hair salon that I went to in New York, only went to it once. It was $500. This one was 300 $300 plus tip. And the hair salon bullied me to tip them. I felt like I was 19 and I didn't really understand at the time. And I was like very naive because tipping culture in South Africa is different to American tipping culture. They asked me to put in was $100, so it's most likely going to be like 400. So like in the end, it's no different. So it was extremely heart-wrenching for me, and this was something that was like within me, and I just wanted to share this story because I wish at that time I've listened to my intuition and more like I should have stand up for myself and questioned everything that the hair salon put me through. Like, why are you cutting my hair this? Shouldn't you dry my hair and everything like that? Because I don't care like what ethnicity or your hair texture is, but you shouldn't be leaving the hair salon with wet hair unless that is what you specifically requested it. So in the end, doing like image consultancy, I have a very good relationship with my hairstylist back in Taiwan. My beloved hairstylist, her name is Kelly, and is that you should trust yourself and be comfortable with your hairstylist, especially when they're going to be touching your hair. That's something that I've learned such a big lesson from. And in addition, following up, like me and this friend were no longer really friends, at least 1 year after that incident, because we had a fallout later on, but that's a story for another time. But I would say the biggest key takeaway with this is you should trust yourself even if you are in a very uncomfortable scenario or you don't feel like you should trust yourself, even it may seem illogical. Trust yourself even if you, and don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you're the customer in this case, because you should have the right to question things that doesn't make sense for you, especially if you want to avoid miscommunication between you and the vendor. But the problem was that I never believed in myself to speak up about it. And now looking back on it now, doesn't matter like whatever country I'm in, whoever's doing my hair, I will always question and make sure that, hey, like, what are you doing with my hair right now? Should have been done properly. So just want to look at my notes and stuff. And one thing I forgot to add, after I got back to the dormitory that day, I automatically went to get my hair washed. I wash my hair because normally, like perming 101, you shouldn't get your hair washed that day. But I'm like, screw it. I'm washing my hair. I'm washing my hair. I don't care if it looks bad because I hated every. And did I find another hair salon in the end? Yes, I did. And funny enough, I got my hair done also in Flushing, but it was at a Korean hair salon. It's not a fancy studio or anything like that. It was just like also similar. It was like an upstairs hair salon. And at least the service they provide was exquisite. Pricing was fair. They treated me very fairly. And I didn't feel very intimidated or bullied into doing things. And I believe if the hair salon still operate, I think it's called K-pop Star Hair Salon in Flushing. They're very good, very reliable. So if you're in Flushing, New York, and need a haircut, that's a place you could go to. And yeah, this is a very long-winded episode because I just want to share my story in this regards. If you have any crazy like hair stories that you want to share in the comments or share any tips regarding like getting your hair done, especially how to communicate with your hairstylist or any hairstylist willing to share their thoughts on the story or just any scenario, you're more than welcome to them in the comments. And do subscribe if you really want to share, if you want to listen to more stories or insights regarding intuition. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your week. I hope you enjoy the story, and I hope the best things are ahead of you. Thank you and take care.